We're just going to go ahead and get started. You guys let your friends know that we're already started. Just pop them a text, send them a note on Substack. I want to introduce you to my guest. Alex Kelloff is a fourth generation Coloradan whose family's roots in the 3rd Congressional District go all the way back to 1893 when the family first arrived in Trinidad, Colorado. Alex grew up in a family that ran Kelloff's food markets in the San Luis Valley, so he knows what it means when a small business is the heartbeat of a rural community. Alex is not a career politician. He held a top secret security clearance while embedded with the United States Marine Corps at the Pentagon and Quantico, where he became the first civilian contractor ever awarded a Marine Corps Certificate of Commendation. He went on to earn a master's from Johns Hopkins and an MBA from INSEAD, a highly prestigious nonprofit graduate business school in France known as the Business School for the World. After that, he drafted the original business plan for Armada Skis, and he helped build it into a globally recognized brand. He's a lifelong outdoorsman, mountain biking, skiing, hunting, fishing, and he lives in Old Snow, Mass., which is near Aspen in the heart of Pitkin County ski industry at the foot of the iconic Maroon Bells. He's running for Congress because he believes CD3 deserves a representative who comes from the district and will fight for the people and the land there. One of 2 Democrats running in the primary for CD3, Alex Kelloff, is endorsed by John Salazar, the last Democrat to hold this seat. Please welcome Alex Salazar.
Alex Kelloff.
Alex Kelloff. Thank you. Good grief.
I'd be proud to be part of the Salazar family, but I am not.
Yeah, Ken and John, right. And so I need to mute that and thought I had that turned off. Sorry. Alex, your family has been in Colorado since 1893, 4 generations in this state. Your father spent 60 plus years at the National Institutes of Health and still goes to work every day at 83. Your mother was a guide and educator at the Smithsonian. You grew up mowing lawns, shoveling snow, working construction to pay your way through school. What did your upbringing teach you about work as both a means to thrive and to give back?
So thanks for having me today, Sandy. It's great to be with you.
It's a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I really was, I think you may have mentioned it, but my mother also went to high school in Grand Junction. So as you mentioned in my background, the family roots run deep in the district, but it truly is both my mother's family and my father's family were in different parts of the district. And so I was raised on those Western and Southern Colorado values. And, one of the things I'm very focused on, we'll probably talk about it more, is I just don't believe we have representation from our elected representatives in Washington these days that are upholding those rural values and interests. And so, per your question, I just feel blessed that I was raised on generations of those values from both sides of the family. And that's frankly what really compelled me to run in terms of not feeling like we have the representation in Washington that's upholding those values.
So you went from holding a top secret clearance at the Pentagon to co-founding Armada Skis. What connects these chapters for you?
I think my parents and my relatives have always instilled in me a lifelong yearning for learning, critical thinking, intellectual curiosity. And that's led me to, as you mentioned in the opening in my background, I've had the good fortune to do a lot of different things throughout my life. So yeah, I've been interested in a lot of different things. My love for the outdoors led me to help one of my best friends from college uh, get Armada Skis started. I pursued a career in telecommunications because I was getting out of college when the internet in the mid 90s was becoming a thing, and I was always fascinated by this idea that if you had internet access, it didn't matter who you are, where you lived, how wealthy you were, you had access to all of the same information. So that's what compelled me into telecommunications, which then led to me working at the Pentagon. So yeah, it's just really an intellectual curiosity.
It is a broad resume, you have to admit. I love it. I mean, I
Thank
think
you.
your diverse experience might benefit a lot of people, and not just in CD3 where you elected to Congress. Um, let's do some talking about supporting small business and the rural economy, which your website indicates is a major goal of your campaign.
That's right.
Your family ran local markets in the San Luis Valley. Colorado has 715 plus thousand small businesses, and they're getting hit from every direction. Tariffs up, healthcare costs up 22%, workforce shortages. What does that feel like on the ground in CD3 right now?
Well, certainly from a cost of living perspective, people are struggling. So whether that's access to affordable health care or gasoline prices, utility prices, grocery prices, and of course, access to quality health care is a critical concern. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So just even having good jobs that can pay a living wage and allow one to survive and hopefully, thrive in their communities, raise a family, pursue the American dream. Many people feel like that is out of reach today. So that's what it feels like on the ground here. You know, a few reasons why I'm very focused on the small business formation, job creation, entrepreneurship is we don't have a lot of large employers in the district. The largest employers would be things like healthcare industry or education. Um, but then it's small businesses, whether you're a farmer, rancher, you're an outdoor recreation person. So, because as you noted, my family, on both sides of my family, come from small businesses, these are the things that are critically important to me and part of what I'm focused on in this campaign.
So you've talked about rancher-owned meat processing, farming co-ops, local business incubators, keeping value in the community instead of exporting it. And
Right.
what does this actually look like legislatively? What can Congress do?
It's a great question. Particularly what you're mentioning about co-ops. This was really an idea by Vic Myers, who's running in a House district here in Colorado, and he and I overlap because this congressional district is in the House district that he's running in, and this was really his idea, and I'm fully on board with it. And
Hmm.
the way I would look at it is creating vertical integration, if you will, from everyone from the ranchers themselves that are grazing their cattle, et cetera, then citing a feedlot in the district, in the county, all the way from processing plant and packaging. So it would really be that vertical integration and keeping that value of the whole value chain, if you will, in a county, in the district. Again, working with folks like Vic that would be taking the lead from more of a state and local government perspective to help incentivize that new business creation and job formation, keeping the value more locally, whether that's the San Luis Valley or other places within the district.
It could also really affect quality control if all the processes stay with the origin source. So, a particular product could be known for its exquisite quality because it was not only grown there, but also processed there and developed there into a quality product. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a really great idea, especially for a district like yours. I'm going to talk about how your Republican opponent looks at your district.
Sure.
Jeff Hurd and other Republicans argue that reducing regulation and opening up resource extraction, oil, gas, mining, creates the real small business opportunity on the Western slope. How do you respond to the argument that environmental protections are themselves a barrier to rural economic growth?
I mean, this is all double speak, spin. Frankly, it's lies. First of all, Jeff Hurd would have you think that natural resource extraction as the largest industry in this third congressional district. That's not true. It's actually outdoor recreation. And so when we talk about things like protecting public lands and our water, of which I know we're going to get to, all that does is take away and not protect when we're out there extracting for oil and gas or what have you. And so, you know, I think, look, I am not opposed. The oil and gas industries aren't going away overnight. I think long term, we need to seek a just transition to more clean energy and have that balance, of which we have abundant sunshine, as you know, in this state. There are places where wind, not, geothermal, particularly up in the northwestern part of the state in this district. So Jeff Hurd can talk about that. But look, let's also look in recent history when shale production became economic. We had many, many small businesses started. It tanked the price of natural gas. And then many of these local firms went out of business, or we've seen consolidation in the hands of just larger players that now control the market. So it isn't, all of what he says the benefits are, frankly, have not been realized if you look at history.
So good answer. I want to come back to this in just a little bit, especially about the outdoor recreation industry.
Sure.
But before we do, one of the goals of your campaign that you mentioned is lowering the cost of living. So let's get into some questions on that. Healthcare, housing, gas, groceries, costs are rising on vital necessities. In CD3 specifically, are the cost of living pressures the same as elsewhere?
They are, when it comes to things like utilities, groceries, gasoline, there's certainly commonalities there. I think because the ag industry is very large in this district, we're disproportionately hit by things like fertilizer costs, tractor parts, diesel fuel. And look, the way to address things like those specifically are repeal the illegal tariffs that the administration has put in place and that Jeff Hurd is mostly supported. That's a quick solution for many of those cost of living issues. I think when we talk about affordable housing and healthcare, there are some, distinct nuances, if you will, in the district in particular. So let's take healthcare just for a moment. Jeff Hurd's vote for the One Big Beautiful Bill, HR 1, guts Medicaid, as we all know. Our rural hospitals are critically dependent on Medicaid to run. I think this is a simple explanation. Some people want to say, well, why should we subsidize rural hospitals? Well, the real answer is it's an investment. It's not a subsidy or a handout. And the investment we're making is that we, the American people, want food security, want to keep the raising of crops, the raising of cattle in our country. And to do that, it's in rural areas. And those ranchers and farmers, just like anyone else that lives in the community, rely on local hospitals, local healthcare, of which is the rural hospital. So either we as a country and we as a people decide that growing our food here domestically is important, and if the answer is yes, then we need to invest in our rural hospitals. But part of the affordability issue with healthcare right now is you had Republicans not they allowed the premium tax credits to sunshine and fall away, and then cuts to Medicaid and other program cuts are driving up the cost of healthcare. We're being hit by that disproportionately in this rural area, which is a little bit different than many other parts of the states.
Yeah, you anticipated my question, but we scrubbed a bunch of research numbers. You have 13 rural hospitals in your district: Alamosa, Cortez, Craig, Fruta, Glenwood Springs, Gunnison, La Jara, La Junta, Pueblo, Rangeley, Rifle, and Trinidad. And HR 1 is projected to cut $10 billion from Colorado hospitals. That's 13 of them. That's a lot. That's going to be a lot of money. Some of your future constituents are also going to see the premium increases that you just talked about How do you talk to them about this on the campaign trail?
I mean, it's, we started campaigning. We started this campaign almost 13 months ago, and with the specific intent and part of holding Jeff Hurd accountable so that people understood what he stands for, what votes he's taking, what legislation he himself is putting forth as a congressman. And so it really is holding him accountable, ensuring people are informed about what the truth is. What his vote for HR1, the one big beautiful bill, has done to them, that they understand that the real pain is coming in 2027, because that's when legislatively under the bill, most of the cuts were meant to take place, notwithstanding that they're seeing many of the effects today, but it's going to get worse. And so it's engaging people where they're at, and really trying to inform and educate as to what's really going on and what Jeff Hurd stands for.
Do you feel like you're reaching them? I mean, this is a really red district.
I well, a couple of things. One, 51% of the electorate, the voters, are registered unaffiliated. So whether it's Jeff Hurd and I head to head for November 3rd, which it likely will be, uh, he or I have to get the majority of the unaffiliated voters. You can't solely win CD3 with only Democrats for me
Right.
or only
Right.
Republicans for him. So increasingly, as we do events across this massive district, many independents and unaffiliates are turning out, and more Republicans are turning out to my events and saying that they're going to support me because they understand what Jeff Hurd stands for, particularly being complicit with this administration in particular. So, we feel very good about the momentum we have going forward.
I live in CD4, so it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
It's largely unaffiliated, but they tend to vote red. They vote Republican. So maybe things are changing a little. I'm excited to hear that you have a lot of independents and even
Yeah.
Republicans coming to talk with you. And that's what people want. They want someone who will talk with them and listen to them. I really believe that's true. I've been dabbling in politics, helping campaigns get started and helping elect candidates for a long time. What do the people want? They want to be heard, they want to be thought of, and then they want to hear what you're going to do. So it seems to me just traveling around and talking to them and making sure you get to those independents and some of the Republicans might be the best tack.
That, I just want to riff on that for a second because I'm privy to some of what the Western Slope Republicans say, and they beat up on Jeff Hurd for the same reason I'm criticizing him, is that he's not seen nor heard, no pun intended, across the district. And I think, again, we've been at this for 13 months. I made it a goal for my campaign, for me, to be in all 27 counties of the district before last year. The last meeting I had, the last district I got to was Moffett County, and I met with coal miners out of the Trapper Mine in Craig right before Christmas. That's what you have to do to win this district. That's what we've been doing and what we'll continue to do now on the campaign. And frankly, if I'm lucky enough to be elected into office, we'll continue to do that work, not put our head down like Jeff Hurd does.
Well, and in your district, the margin was so close in the last election. It was only 500 and some votes.
Well, that was
No,
2022.
actually, that was
Not,
yeah,
but
you're right.
last
That was
midterm,
yeah, the last
yeah.
midterm. And so that just accents what you said, that you can get to one more town and convince one more room full of voters and really make a difference.
That's right. And
And
one of the things I would like to say, and this is just kind of a promo, I think, for the campaign, is we started what we're calling By the People Tour, and it's a different type of political event. We've done 8 of them so far. We'll do one tomorrow in Montrose, and we're going to do a total of about 20, maybe even 24 by the time we're done in mid-June. And what this is yes, I get up, I give a 5-minute stump speech, but then I moderate a discussion where I ask questions of those people that have come to see the campaign, I take notes, and then this really gives a chance to engage with people, ask them what they think. I answer questions along the way. This is all going to culminate in a report of our By the People report in mid-June, of which we'll make public for everyone to see. But that's exactly what you're saying, Sandy. Like, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, and we took that under advisement and put together this tour, and it's got great receptivity so far.
I'm excited to hear about this process, and I want you to keep tabs with me as we go through and tell me how this is going. I wouldn't be surprised if some of your soon-to-be constituents don't have some innovative ideas too about their particular areas, and they just want to be listened to.
That's
And
right.
those things can be evaluated and, recreated, looked at. So let's talk about one of those issues where we really need some innovation. You've proposed investing in infrastructure, housing, water, energy, telecom, transportation as a path to lowering costs. Let's talk about how building a reservoir or expanding broadband makes life cheaper for a family in Gunnison or Montrose.
Yeah. Yeah. So my whole career, 30 plus years, has been in the telecommunications industry, and it's building physical critical infrastructure. It's things like laying down fiber optic cable. These are construction jobs, construction projects. Oftentimes we employ trades in union labor. So it's something I know something about. I've also been involved in a number of innovative public private partnerships. And the reason I think that's important right now is, look, to build this infrastructure, whether it's like you mentioned, utility, energy, transportation, the like, dams, bridges, cost money. And we know with these federal cuts, we also know with our federal debt and deficit that there just isn't the money to fund this infrastructure, either new development that we need, but also just maintaining the existing infrastructure we have. So I think one of the ways we can do this is through incentivizing private capital to help fund, offset, or fully fund these projects, but do it in a way of which I have experience where the governance model of managing these projects or these investments is such that you have publicly elected officials at the local level partnered with the private capital that comes in to help fund these things, and therefore the taxpayers looking after, the local voters are looking after, they're not being fleeced by some developer coming in. And again, I think there are very innovative models to do that. And the last thing I'd say about this is, I think very inexpensively we can create a center of excellence at the federal government. I don't know, that might be under the Department of Commerce, where it takes best practices from around the country and around the world, frankly, and says, when you're building a new airport or you're building a new terminal at an airport, who did this most successfully? And so, if you're in Montrose, you can go to the Center of Excellence for free and find out, based on your circumstances locally, what model might work best for you. And therefore, we don't need to recreate the wheel. So those are, I could get more into the details, but those are some specific ideas I have around how we're going to build out this critical infrastructure we need in our communities.
I think, though, if we're going to get federal dollars involved, we're going to have to get a majority because the current Congress is focused on tax breaks for the rich and spending cuts for the rest of us. So this is why every Coloradan, no matter what district they live in, should be concerned about who gets elected in CD3. So I know that our audience has people from my district here, and I hope from other districts. Let us know where you're from, because we want to flip all the seats in Colorado to caring representatives who are going to look after the people instead of look after the billionaires. Let's move on and talk about the topic that we started to touch on, which is protecting public lands. And we only started because we were talking about how outdoor recreation is such a vital industry, and that requires protecting some public lands. The beauty of Colorado draws tourists, outdoor recreation tourists, fishermen, hunters, people who just want to sit by a campfire and look at the maroon bells from all over the country and even the world. So let's talk about protecting public lands. You published an op-ed in Yellow Scene magazine. Yes, we've been researching you, Alex, arguing that outdoor recreation is a bigger economic driver in CD3 than oil and gas. You mentioned that before.
Yep.
What's the actual economic comparison? Do you have some?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm challenged offhand to give you the exact details around that. What I can tell you is um, is that obviously it's critically important. A lot of small businesses, draws a lot of tourism dollars, so lodging, entertainment. It's vast across the whole district, everywhere from National Monument in Grand Junction to the sand dunes in the San Luis Valley. So a lot of Black Canyon of the Gunnison, in Gunnison County. So it's critically important, and these are under assault. And one thing I'd like to say about public lands, which is this is stating the obvious, but there are lands. They're the American people's lands. We, the people, own the public lands. So people need to understand that when we talk about this administration trying to sell off and lease off the public lands, they're doing it to you and I. It's our land. And I think sometimes that gets lost and people just don't seem to equate that.
Yeah, we're not just landlords maintaining them. They're our treasures, they're our riches, and they're where our resources reside from. And if you talk to a small owner of a restaurant, an outfitter, somebody who has a few cabins to rent along a riverfront, or a hotelier, they're going to tell you how important the economy of economics, I think economy of tourism to public lands is, because they see it drop when, for example, there's no snow in the ski areas, or there's no water during kayaking season in the river, or when the trout are low, So we can see it as Coloradans. We
Sure.
know it's important, but we need Congress to know that and to help. So we need to send people to Congress who understand it. And Congressman Hurd's Productive Public Lands Act would force BLM to reissue 9 land management plans to open up drilling and mining. He calls it energy dominance. You
Right.
call it something else. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, I think, look, we're blessed as the United States to be abundant in these resources, and we are the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. So we're fortunate we have that domestic energy security, particularly as we're fighting illegal wars of choice in Iran, and so notwithstanding that, we see our gas prices and our diesel prices climb significantly. So these are important industries. I don't want to make light of it. They aren't going away anytime soon. We do need a just energy transition to more clean energy. Uh, Being a lifelong business person, one of the things that disgusts me the most, and I think you could challenge any business person, Republican, Democrat, Independent alike, is that one of the worst things that this administration has done for business is just created this chaos and uncertainty about how if investment is made in a clean energy project, and you have all of your permits and you begin to invest the money, you've hired people, you've hired unions to build it out, and then all of a sudden Trump just decides one day, because he's grouchy, that he's going to stop for whatever reason he comes up with. And it makes it very, very difficult for business people then to undertake new investments. And frankly, that's the same if you're drilling for oil and gas. Like, someone may lease off these lands for oil and gas exploration, but I would challenge anyone. I bet no one's making significant investments into actually drilling right now, notwithstanding drill, baby, drill, because they don't know what'll happen tomorrow. the Strait of Hormuz could open up, gas prices could fall, and then it could become uneconomic to drill again. So it's really this chaos that's been created, this uncertainty, and just this unlawlessness that is just bad for our public lands, but also bad for the business of climate and investment.
Yeah, and that's true for any business because you don't know if you're going to have a labor shortage because of the removal of immigrant population, whether they're legal or illegal. You don't
Yeah.
know if you're going to be able to get supplies and material that you need to launch a new enterprise because it might be coming from China. What are the tariffs today? I mean, the whole economic uncertainty of any business right now is very frightening for the economy.
Yeah. And just one other point on Jeff Hurd's stance on oil and gas land leases. I mean, what you find when you actually look at the data and explore it a little bit more, which I'm sure you and your team have done, is that when the Bureau of Land Management leases off land in Garfield County here or what have you for oil or natural gas extraction, it's basically the oil explorer comes in, the developer, and the lease that they're signing is subsidized by we, the taxpayer. It
Right.
costs them virtually nothing to tie up that land for a 20-year lease. What they'll do is they'll just sit on it and look at it as an option, knowing that economically it doesn't make sense for them to drill today. And the US government, the taxpayer, doesn't really benefit until they actually start extracting that and selling the oil or whatever. And then the US government starts to get paid. Notwithstanding that, this developer who's leased this for virtually nothing with the taxpayer subsidizing it, they can say, hey, there's proven oil reserves in the ground, and I can borrow money against that asset. So it is a windfall deal for them that's being subsidized by us, the taxpayer, and it's leasing off or selling off our public lands, of which we, the people, own. We're not getting anything for it. We're subsidizing it, and then it's tying up that land. So you're likely not able to hunt on it, hike on it, mountain bike on it, whatever. So Jeff Hurd will never talk about that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting window into what happens when these land leases go up on the auction block, what, every year, every spring or so, is that
Yeah,
people can tie them up just so long as they can prove that they have the resources and the intent, but they never actually have to do the work. So, you mentioning that they can borrow against it is something I hadn't thought about, but
yeah,
wow, we're giving somebody a big break. Listen, we're talking about land. Let's talk about water. Water
yeah,
is a big issue to me. Every politician I have on this show, this is a big question I ask them. It's critical. It's the most critical resource, not only in CD3, but throughout the West. Meanwhile, let's just look at something in your district. Commodity prices are volatile, with beef at record highs, grain at
yes.
historic lows, creating instability for local agricultural and livestock producers. How do you balance the need to increase water conservation and protect wildlife and public lands with the economic demands of these two water and land devouring industries?
Yeah.
I mean, this has to be tough. This really has to be tough.
This
And we have got to find balance because we need both.
Absolutely. And I know you have a rural background as well in ag, and so you understand the issue. And also, I think to your point, how complex it is and how multifaceted it is. So when I talk about water in the district, you could start with, well, are we talking about the Colorado River Compact and the issue there and coming off the lowest snowpack on record in the state? That's obviously affecting the compact. Let me touch on that for a moment. So 7 states that make up the upper and lower basin states share water out of the Colorado River. We need to come to an agreement as to how we move forward in the sharing of that water. We haven't been able to come to agreement at the state level. The thing I worry about the most, that I think most people do, is that we have the federal government come in and decide for us. And we know what will happen to Colorado if that's the case. We will get screwed, just like we've gotten screwed over many different issues. We can talk about lack of FEMA funding or voter rights otherwise. So that's one issue with respect to water in the district. I think, by the way, I think the solution there is we need a third party mediator to come in and have the states get together and work this out through negotiation through a third party mediator. So that's one aspect of water. Another aspect is certainly water consumption for, like we've talked about, outdoor recreation on the rivers, the wildlife, the fish, the riparian areas that are caused by these streams, or also irrigation for the ag industry. There, I think it's a little bit of, hey, coming off a low snowpack year, what do we need to do to ensure that snowpack going forward and for generations to come is sustained? I think part of that is obviously managing the climate, just transition to more clean, renewable energy over time. But it's also people that own the water rights. They view these things as public rights. I understand it. I understand private property rights. We need to create incentives so that people manage their water better. And they don't say, hey, it's my water. I can do with it anything I want. So I think it's more about creating incentives to manage water better rather than legislating how they should be using their water altogether. So that's another aspect. I guess the third aspect I would just say is part of what we're talking about infrastructure. We need to ensure that we maintain our infrastructure and or build new infrastructure to preserve that water. So whether that's maintaining ditches, dams, reservoirs, I think there's some critical investments we need to make that we haven't kept up with that maintenance, and we need to do so.
I just want to say the current compact between the 7 states expired this year. And the thing that's going to happen is we're going to have to talk to each other in the light of a new day, because the existing compact was designed when we didn't have water issues. And so thinking that we're going to go along and be able to withdraw this much money for Arizona to keep developing and to give to Saudi Arabian uh, farmers for food for their horses, that kind of thing. No, we're going to have to reassess everything. I think in CD3, you have to understand that water is important for 7 states, but you also have to protect the agricultural and livestock industries that exist there because they feed us. I mean, and this is going to have to be all the way down the Colorado River. It has
Yeah.
to take that into account. So we need to just sit down and drop a whole new plan. The old plan was based on abundant water, and that's
It
not the
was
case.
also, yeah, it was based on some what became erroneous underlying assumptions. And the other thing I'd say, and this is a general statement, but it applies to the compact, is we need to base our decisions on science, right? And facts and
You think?
scientific facts. So, yeah.
Yeah. So one of your let's segue. One of your campaign website mentions is talking about getting money out of politics and protecting the right to vote. So we're really talking about trying to right the ship of democracy, which has gone aground, I would have to say. Let's talk about what overturning Citizens United could look like legislatively. Hawaii is taking this on at the state corporate charter level with the recently passed Act 011, I think, and it prohibits corporations from spending money to influence elections. And Montana is trying to do a similar thing,
Hmm.
but by petition, because their legislators are not interested in the act. So the people are trying to get enough petitions to make it a ballot measure. What's realistic? Can we do something at the federal level, do you think, if we get enough right-thinking people in Congress? Or, how do we overturn Citizens United?
Well, I think the key point was what you just made. If we get enough reasonably minded people, I think we could. I think in the political environment, um, very difficult. I love one of the sayings by Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's longtime business partner who recently passed away. He said, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes." Unfortunately, under Citizens United and the fact that corporate PACs and others, dark money, can give to campaigns, the incentive for people running for office is take that money because they think that'll lead to them winning. I want to make 2 points, and this isn't answering your question specifically. One is I'm taking no corporate PAC money. I've
I
only
was going to
raised
ask you
okay.
that. I was
I've
going
only
to
raised money from individuals, and frankly, most of those individuals have come from in district. But you and I talked earlier about how important it is that people want to be seen and heard, and I actually think that you look across, any of the special elections, notwithstanding these recent Republican primaries. I think those are a little bit different. Any of the special elections that were general elections, really since Trump took office, vast majority have been won by a candidate who raised less money than their challenger, right? So money is not everything. And I think it's going to become more important in these midterms and going forward that you're seen and heard, that you're meeting with people, that the campaign's out knocking doors, and people get that human interaction. I think honestly, it's that grassroots effort that's going to lead to reasonably minded people getting elected and then setting up to overturn things like Citizens United and the other important work that Congress needs to address.
That's a good answer. We always ask candidates if they're a people powered campaign, and the reason is people should know. People should know who they're really representing. And I was glad that you volunteered that information because I was going to nail you on it. I was going to ask you.
Well, good.
So, on the same subject of righting the ship, last week the Supreme Court of Virginia struck down the congressional redistricting approved by voters in April. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the Virginia Democrats' emergency appeal. So they're not going to hear it. It's dead. Let's be clear. This is not overturning a map. The people of Virginia held an election. They went to the polls. They said overwhelmingly with their votes that they wanted this. The court overturned an election. With the legal and legislative playing field so corrupted by the taint of money and power, plus gerrymandering and election denial, soul polluting the process, how do we move forward and protect the right to vote and the right to free and fair elections?
I mean, again, and we could go on and on. There are dozens of things we could talk about that are really hard problems. I think, again, in many respects, it's incumbent upon we the people, we the voters at a grassroots level to push back. I think I'll give you an example, a recent local example, where I think people powered voices were heard. In Glenwood Springs, which is in this district, which sits in a fairly red county, not totally, but it's more red than blue. There was a planning and zoning commission hearing at the city level for an ICE detention facility, which has been there for 23 years, I believe. And it was a public hearing. I went and I spoke publicly, next to neighbors that spoke out against that the people in the community did not want the ICE detention facility. Furthermore, the municipality had the right to revoke a local permit for that facility to operate. And there were 6 commissioners, and it was clear from the county attorney saying that, look, you can revoke this license and try and shut down the detention facility, but the reality is that the federal government has jurisdiction to basically ignore you. And so, people were happy that there was this hearing. They could make their voices heard. That was important. In the end, the commission voted 5-1 to revoke the permit. And
I
they
love
did
that.
so. These are elected officials, right? And
Yeah.
they're in a more red area. At the local level, you see political courage. You see people standing up, listening and doing the right thing, and listening to their constituents. So, is the ICE detention facility going to be closed down? Maybe, maybe. It more likely now in that they voted the way they did to revoke the license than denying the revocation. So, look, I think whether it's voting rights or other things, it starts with the people. It starts with the people being engaged, being active, making sure they cast their votes, making sure their voices are heard, and it rises from the bottom up.
That's wonderful to know. And we also need people who are listening and thinking about the people in Congress because the federal government has the greater power. And in instances like we've mentioned, where gerrymandering has become a problem, that people have tried to overturn it locally, and then the higher powers of the state, and then, even the Supreme Court have overturned the will of the people. So we really need to elect good candidates at every level, which is why we
Absolutely.
wanted to hear from you about your plans, your ideas.
Thank you.
And we're doing something at the end of these shows that I think has created the most interest from the clips that we put on Substack and on YouTube and social media. And I'm going to do that to you right now. I'm going to ask a very personal question
Sure.
as my closing question. And I want you to take your time, talk about it as much as you want. But I think this will help people get to know you, and it should interlace with all the things that we've talked about. Your family ran local markets in the San Luis Valley. These were places where people bought their food, where kids got their first jobs, where the owners knew your name. Stores like that are gone now in a lot of small towns across CD3. When you think about today's families trying to thrive owning a small business, about today's kids trying to work hard at odd jobs and raise enough money to go to school, and trying to find opportunities for a good future without having to leave and live somewhere else because the cost of living is 4% higher in Colorado than neighboring states. What would it take to bring back vibrant economic opportunities for youth and for local enterprise in rural Colorado?
I think we need to make and yeah, we need to make investments in our communities like my ancestors did in San Luis Valley and elsewhere. Um, and what I mean by that is, it's neighbor helping neighbor. It's viewing, our tax dollars into things like our social programs, not as handouts, but investments that we make in the communities to ensure that we have as you said, vibrant communities where people want to come live, and they should be able to live where they work and raise their families there. And that's across not just industry, healthcare, education, but it's also the arts, and to make
Right.
these interesting, vibrant communities, again, where people want to live and work. That attracts other people that will want to live and work there, and creates that vibrancy that then drives these communities forward, um, so that you can earn a fair wage. We can build enough so that we can lower the overall costs, uh, and and I think that's how we get back to having these communities thrive, and just the diversity of the people in those communities, the diversity of thought, the diversity of jobs that are there, make our communities more resilient in that way.
You were a kid watching your family feed a town. I mean, you were actually part of the process of building jobs and economy for an area. And this might inform you as a congressman about what's needed at the ground level across Colorado. How does your heart feel when you think about the opportunities that you had that might not be here?
Well, I mean, I appreciate the question. Honestly, that's simply that was the motivation for running when
I
Trump
love
got,
that.
well, I mean, when Trump got reelected in 2024, November 2024, I was deeply concerned about the direction he would take the country in his second term. And here we are, what, 16 months later, and it's way worse than I ever could have imagined. But the reason my motivation for running was because I was worried about the direction he would take the country and the effect that that would have on the district I'm running in, of which we've talked about. My family roots go back 130 years. So yeah, I'm concerned. I'm fighting every day. That's why I've been fighting for 13 months. Yeah,
Yeah, I think you saying that that's what actually germinated in you and caused you to want to run for office tells me a lot about you, maybe more than all your policy ideas or anything else you said. So I want to thank you very much for being our guest, and I want to address our audience both here and on the video that'll be released later. We haven't done this on a Thursday before. We did it on a Thursday because of Memorial Day weekend, but we enjoyed having everyone who came to the show and everyone who'll be watching later. And I want you to know that this video will be shareable. We'll also have clips from it on Substack and YouTube and on social media channels. And maybe Alex will want to put some of them
definitely.
on his website as well, so that people who missed it can see the things we talked about. I think we got to know you really well, Alex, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us once you win your primary.
I
And
would love to.
when you're on the way to your November election, I will post all of the concrete calls to action and resource links that our team has put in the chat in the show notes when we release the video. And also look for Our Democracy Collective. That's our nonprofit on Substack and on YouTube. And you can find me on Substack at Sandi Ault, reporting from the wild. Thank you, Alex Kelloff, and good luck in your
Thank,
campaign.
thank you, Sandy. Really appreciate it, and happy Memorial Day to you and everyone else.
Thanks so much. And thanks everyone who came. We love you all. And we'll see you on the video and at the next show. Come back,
Thank
okay,
you.
Alex?
I will. I
Bye.
look forward to it. Bye bye.